Welcome back. You're watching Startup Central with me, Naintara Rai, working from home. This is the only show of its kind on Indian television dedicated, of course, to startups, innovation, technology, disruption, entrepreneurship. If it falls under the gambit of the new economy, it's here every weekday at 6 p.m. on ET Now. Let's take you through some of the big stories that we're seeing in the startup universe today. It's time now for Startup Central Fatapat, and we do this in Fatapat style. Here is Uber has a long history of trouble with violence and assault between its drivers and passengers. The latest development is Uber California's Public Utility Commission for denying to answer questions about a safety report. Apple has updated its App Store to show privacy labels with the information that iPhone apps collect about users. This feature will go live across all Apple's app stores, including on iPads, Mac, and the iPhone and Apple TV. Apple began asking developers to submit their privacy practices along with submission of new apps and updates. Pinterest announced it settled a gender discrimination lawsuit brought forth by former COO, who will be paid $20 million. Both Pinterest and the former CEO will donate $2.5 million towards advancing women and underrepresented communities in the tech industry. Noida-based startup Arya has raised $21 million in its Series B financing round. Pona Capital, LGT Lightstone, Aspada were part of the investment round. Arya is working with all stakeholders like farmers, food processors to bridge the post-harvest services gap. PhonePe has raised 150 crore rupees from majority shareholders and its parent company Flipkart. PhonePe allocated shares to Flipkart's Singapore-based holding. PhonePe is, of course, planning to go public by 2023 as a separate entity, either in the US or in India, hoping for a valuation of $7 to $10 billion. Elon Musk, SpaceX, is in discussion with investors to raise another round of funding and double its valuation to as much as $92 billion. Talks are still at an early stage, according to reports. Oh, we were just telling you how a Noida-based agri-startup Arya has raised $21 million. And let's put the focus on agri-tech startups. Not just because of what you're seeing at Delhi's borders with farmer protests, but this is, of course, the next big opportunity. India is an agricultural-based economy as well. And we are seeing fantastic innovation there and founders taking an interest to rewrite India's agricultural landscape. Talk to me more about this is my next guest, Mark Kahn, the managing partner at Omnivore. Mark, first up, thank you for joining us live. I know you are in the United States and you had to wake up really, really early to be a part of this live broadcast on ET Now. So let's get down to it. Can I begin by asking you at Omnivore, which is, you're looking to invest in agri-tech startups. What was 2020 like? And this is also going to be, am I right or wrong? Please tell me, a sector where you may not see the returns as early on as you could in many other sectors, and therefore it may not be as hot or as sexy?
So 2020 has probably been the best year for Indian agri-tech since Omnivore started. We're not new to this space. Omnivore was the pioneer fund focused on Indian agri-tech. My co-founder Janesh Shah and I came together in 2010 with a vision of transforming Indian agriculture and food systems. We've been hard at work ever since, raised our first fund in 2012-13, and have over 25 portfolio companies, including Arya, the company that you mentioned earlier today, and we're very delighted to see Quona coming into that round. But 2020 has been a very interesting year. Agritech has been on a upward, up and to the right mobility over the course of the last 4 years, with much greater investment from generalist VCs, some of the largest in the country, Excel, Sequoia, Lightspeed, and others. And 2020 took it to a completely different level, where we originally anticipated some significant challenges in March because of COVID. And initial lockdown in India was quite severe, but ultimately it catalyzed a shift where farmers and SME participants in the agri ecosystem migrated to digital platforms like our portfolio company Dehat or Arya or many, many others because of the lockdown, because traditional supply chains in the agri sector were so radically disrupted. And what we've seen is, in the wake of opening up, those farmers, those SME participants, traders, artiyas, others are sticking with these new platforms that allow them to access inputs, access finance, access market linkages, and generally make more money. And so the organization, the digitization of Indian agriculture has really, really taken off this year.
So in agri-tech startup, and of course, it's such a vast field. Can you tell me, what is it that has investors excited at the moment? You guys have a 650 crore rupee fund. What is it that they're looking at? And also at a time when you're seeing the new farm bills being enacted, disruptions at the border, protests going on, wouldn't investors be hesitant at this juncture?
So, as I had to remind an investor earlier this week, agritech didn't start with the passing of the farm bills this summer. The real takeoff goes back to 2016, when I think investors began to look past the Indian consumer story, which had gotten a little exhausted, remember Tiny Owl, and started to look at B2B businesses, right, like Uran. And it was in the wake of that, kind of as Indian VCs discovered Bharat, right? Discovered SMEs, discovered fintech focused on the other half of the economy, that agri-tech started to come into the perspective of generalist investors. And so it's been multiple years that we've seen every year over the course of the past 12 months, probably $500 million of financing coming into the agri-tech ecosystem, right? Big checks written into new companies that have only been around the last few years, like Country Delight, like Fresh to Home. So I definitely think there's been a recognition for many years now that the opportunity is shifting from an urban upper income opportunity to an opportunity to transform India for the other half of the country, for the 25% of the economy that's agriculture and agribusiness, for the 50% of the population that lives on farm, for the part of the economy that has in some ways been left behind, and to build a better future for everyone. And so I think the last few years, long before the passage of these farm bills, investor interest has been just increasing year after year after year. I think the controversy around the farm bills is just giving more attention to the sector and to the challenges of the sector, and educating average citizens and average investors about Indian agriculture, which, to be clear, most aren't. So I think in general, whatever happens with the farm bills, agritech was existing before the farm bills. Agritech will continue to exist, whether they go forward as they are today or whether they're tweaked by the government.
So now, do you want to tell us that within agri-tech, what is considered to be hot? And was it a good year for agri-tech 2020?
I mean, it's strangely, probably the best year we've ever seen, and we've got some major announcements coming out the next few weeks, like the announcement regarding Arya today with Quona investing that are going to drop a few draws. So I think it's been a tremendous year. I think more and more investors, as lockdown set in, began to look at the sectors that would, in a COVID economy, continue to thrive. And agriculture has continued to thrive in the Indian economy despite all of the challenges of COVID. In fact, it was one of the only parts of the Indian economy that continued to grow this year. And so as investors began to look at this new landscape, they identified agri-tech, they identified health, and they identified education as three big themes for this year. So we've definitely never seen this level of attention or interest or round sizes or valuations as we've seen this year.
So we look forward to all of those announcements. And Mark, we hope you'll be back here on Startup Central when it is that Omnivore will be making those announcements.
We look forward to that. And thank you for having me on the show today.
Thank you so much for being here. And once again, we appreciate you waking up super early to be a part of the live broadcast.
Thank you so much. Take care.
But we're going to take a short commercial break, but stay tuned. On the other side, business partners, Mark Zuckerberg and Mukesh Ambani, sharing a virtual stage on the future of technology, why they decided to partner each other, and why it's India's golden decade.